Thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate you for joining South Dakotans Against Racism and our community members, Naima, Danae, Regina, and Angelica, and myself, Julia. So we've got everyone with at the end. That wasn't even on purpose. Joining us today, we're going to have about an hour-long discussion about a specific part of racism that is often overlooked or not addressed. We all have the understanding that racism is defined not necessarily as what we've seen before in the dictionary, but as prejudice plus power. We have to have that component of power. I believe it's Stokely Carmichael that says, I don't care if a white man wants to lynch me, I care if he has the power to do it. And that's a very important component to it. However, within racism, there's the specific form today that we'll be talking about. We see like the focus of white supremacy and the structure that says or sees white as default or normal. And that means for a lot of well-intentioned folks, especially, good white folks, we see being racist as only the overt slurs and intentional hatred for others. Racism, however, is much more integrated into our world and internally in ourselves than we realize. And to uproot it, we have to be able to face it, to be aware of it, and to acknowledge it. The discussion today that we'll be having together as a group is around anti-Blackness. Anti-Blackness is a specific way under racism and systematic racism and white supremacy that Blackness is seen as something bad, while whiteness and proximity to it is seen as something good. We see this with that binary kind of thinking, right, wrong, good, bad, black and white thinking. And it's something that is ingrained in a lot of us, and it's really difficult as we begin to have these conversations to be able to change our thinking, because there's so many pieces and parts that go into it. So briefly, my name is Julia Tessul, and I'm with South Dakotans Against Racism. We started a group back in 2014 after doing a local Black Lives Matter rally here in Sioux Falls. And the people involved were very much not in a place of being able to understand what it meant to say Black Lives Matter. Some of the other organizers had said something about like the All Lives Matter component, and I realized that we needed to have a really 101 kind of space for white folks to be able to address other white folks about systematic racism and whiteness. And so this last year, we've done a lot of community education events, and then with COVID, we've transitioned into more of our online communications. So I'm going to go ahead and let everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and start the discussion. Naima, if you would do the honor of being the next introduction.
Of course. I'm 71. I go first. I'm Naima Facing, and I live in Elkton, South Dakota. I have the privilege of being told just recently that I am the only African-American Muslim female in the state of South Dakota to hold a council seat. I am a two-time, well, that doesn't sound right, but anyway, I've been on the city council twice in Elkton, and I'm finishing up my last few weeks. And I am a resident here in South Dakota, coming from Minneapolis, St. Paul area since 2005. I've lived in Elkton since 2006. And I just do a lot of stuff because I'm retired. Oh, I have more, but go ahead.
Thank you, Naima. I don't know if there's someone else that wants to volunteer next, or I can keep selecting people.
That's all.
Go ahead, Regina.
Hello, everyone. Pleased to meet you all. My name is Regina Ajak. I'm a mother of 3. Just graduated with my bachelor's in sociology with a minor in criminal justice and human development. I do, thank you. I do a lot of activism work within my community, South Sudanese community. I'm a refugee I was born in Sudan, immigrated to the United States, Dallas, Texas, when I was about 9 years old. That's where I grew up at. Moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota about 5 years ago to basically it's a small city. Liked it. I wanted to go back to school. It was easier to get around here. And I do a lot of volunteer work, very active. We're just trying to bridge the gap within, you know, the South Sudanese community and the community here in Sioux Falls, and basically just, you know, passionate about, you know, community work and community building, and just, you know, unlearning some of those bias conditioning that we've been taught in society. So, yeah.
Thank you.
If you have any question, you can ask if I forgot anything.
I can go next. My name is Angelica Mercado Ford, and today I am here mostly for the purpose of listening and kind of gathering what I can do to educate other non-Black friends and family in ways we can target anti-Blackness in our communities. But I also do activism work, especially through the arts here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Awesome.
Okay.
I guess I'm next. My name is Danae Verba. I am born and raised in Sioux Falls to a white mother and a Black father. I attended grade school, primary school, all the way through my senior year here in Sioux Falls, and then I left for college and lived in Las Vegas, Nevada for about 15 years, and moved back to Sioux Falls to be with my family. Most of my family remain in Sioux Falls, and my perspective upon returning compared to what it was growing up is what I hope to bring to the conversation today. Also, that duality, my whiteness and my Blackness, and how I have, like, in the prior kind of lead-up conversation, we spoke to how there seems to be a false Venn diagram. You must choose. You are one or the other, or if there is crossover, one is qualified by the other, one is diluted by the other. I am a biologist, and I am a sexuality educator. My activism is daring to exist and speak up. I'm finding my voice, and organizations like SDAR help me. I feel supported, and so I want to support you and learn together. And the other way that I express my activism is through educating in my sexuality education. Cultural humility and inclusion and exploration of diversity is a huge part of sexuality education. And I've learned so much in the last few years that I've been in this role that has also helped me find my voice and find strength. So it's kind of great to be here now. I'm also a mother. I have a young daughter who, upon sight, passes as white. So that's another fun perspective I can bring to the conversation. So yeah, I will speak as long as you will let me. I have lots of things to say, but I appreciate so much the other people on the panel here. I have so much respect for you all. I can't wait to hear and learn from you as well.
Me too. Awesome.
Thank you so much. Well, and I'm definitely, I think one of the things we try and do with the conversations is, as much as possible, let them be organic, not having a lot of structure. We have a few notes of just things to touch on, but I'm totally willing to let folks just begin if you feel comfortable with, sharing your perspective on how you've seen anti-Blackness manifest within your life or your community. And just being able to start the conversation with that kind of foundation to those personal experiences.
Well, I see everybody so talkative.
We're ready to dig in and just start this conversation. For me, Okay, so it's so deep. It's so deep because it's so deep and it's so personal to me because I'm I'm as dark as it gets, right? So I've experienced it within my own family, with, you know, primary school, with society, all of it together. And let me just start from within my own family. Um, Growing up, my mother bleached, and part of, you know, that in a way made me feel like my dark skin was not good enough, right?
Yep.
I've also had my struggles of trying to bleach my skin. As I was growing up, I was surrounded by young girls who were bleaching their skin, and I was almost the darkest girl in the room all the time. And I think part of the reason that they were bleaching their skin was because of the fact that they were made fun of because they were so dark, right? So I've had my struggles with that, and knowing and being around women that were bleaching made me feel like maybe for me to be more beautiful, I had to bleach. And I had that, I experimented with bleaching my skin. But it only took me a week before I realized that that's not something that I wanted to do. It took me a week before I realized that I, as much as the beauty standard was being light skinned, I felt less of myself when I started bleaching my skin. And so that's why it's so personal to me. And when it comes to secondary in school, growing up, I was made fun of because of my skin, because I was dark skinned. I've heard comments within my family and the community that I grew up in, that spoke of being so dark as to not being beautiful, right? And people would often say, "Oh my gosh, why are you so dark?" Or, "Oh my gosh, you know, maybe if you lighten your skin a little bit and wear straight hair, you would get, you know, a better position here and there." Or even as far as, I mean, just a lot of comments that made being Black as not good enough or not beautiful. And those had a lot of effect in my, whether mental health and how I view myself. And that's why when I finally found my voice, when I finally found my voice, it was a mission for me to advocate for those young girls. It was a mission for me to use my voice to say, you know what, Black is beautiful. My skin is beautiful. I am beautiful. And those of you that say that I'm not, I will not tolerate, and I will not allow you to put your standard of beauty or your biased belief of what beauty is, and that being Black, there is no beauty in being Black. That's why I advocate so much against bleaching, and I advocate so much for this quote unquote anti-Black, or being not, I'm losing my train of thought, but like that beauty standard has to be that you're more lighter skin or whatnot. And I know this is not just with being Black within our Black community, it's something that affects also lighter skinned women as well. They've had their struggles of, you know, being made fun of for not being Black enough. So it's something that we struggle in with our community, and just kind of finding that balance of appreciating one another, as appreciating each other as a Black community, as Black people all in general, and saying that regardless if we're lighter, darker, whatever it is that we may look like, it doesn't matter, because we're all beautiful, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And just kind of building that confidence for each Black girl to feel confident in who she is, whether light skin, dark skin, whatever it is that you that makes you who you are. So
Good for you. Good for you.
thank you.
I love the advocacy that you've been doing on social media. It's really inspiring. And yes, colorism in the Black community is a thing. I have struggled with the way that my body is through my whole life, and have internalized that standard of beauty until I left this town. And then I went to a more cosmopolitan, more international place, and noticed, hey, people here aren't surprised that I exist. Here, I see people who have hair like mine, skin tones like mine, light eyes like mine. Getting out of Sioux Falls, getting out of South Dakota, I'm not gonna lie, probably saved my life.
Yep.
And growing up here, not looking like my mother, not looking like my sister, not looking like my cousins, wasn't a thing when we were all together, but you introduce one outsider and all of a sudden it's a thing. You build that bubble around yourself. Like, these are the people who know you, who accept you, who when they look at you, it is perceived as normal and therefore beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the standard of beauty? The standard of beauty is based on normal, typical. If you're atypical, are you beautiful? Sometimes. Sometimes those features are the things that elevate your look, that exceptional look. But if you're too different, it's like brains go, it can't, I don't know what that is. And I've had people straight up ask me that, what are you? Like, that is not a compliment. And I have straight messed with people. I used to lie as a game. Oh, I'm Egyptian and Dutch was one. And people would be like, oh yes, I thought I noticed. Like, they would rationalize and, oh no. I got caught in a lie. I had a gentleman ask me once, I gave him one answer, we ran into each other again. Down the line, I didn't remember him. Somebody else asked me and I answered with a different answer. And he called me out on it and he says that I know you and that's not what you said before. So, okay, I gotta backtrack. I am Scandinavian and West African. And he says, now you're a liar. I don't believe you. I'm like, no, and I'm trying to assert, like, this is the truth this time. And I'm still being told, no, that's not right. That's not what you are. Like, how dare you, first of all? But it's my fault for lying. Being able to mess with people like that comes from a very strange place. It was me asserting some sort of power. It was me kind of coming into my identity and being able to say, well, I'm not one thing. I have to be multiple things, and it has to make sense to someone else. And when the truth doesn't make as much sense as the lies I'm telling, like, what is that? What is that? So I had to stop lying about it first. And I had to come to some sort of like truth. What is my identity? I did some DNA tests. I learned some things. And having that revelation and having some information to back my knowledge of self has made me feel beautiful. But for the young people who don't have that life experience, who don't have that information, like Regina, what you said is so meaningful and powerful. Like, we have to tell them, no, you are okay. No, you are beautiful. No, you are accepted. No, you are represented. Because I didn't have that as a kid. And it took me until I was about 25, 26 until I started seeing representation and I started feeling normal. And it changed how other people treated me as well. So all those messages that I got as a child of being othered, of being weird, of being not quite right, they are deep, deep inside me, and I fight them all the time. And I'm going to go on a run here, sorry. The way that they manifest is that I never feel good enough. I am a token. My proximity to whiteness gives me value. I am a white person with a little spice on top. Like, no, that's not quite right either, I've come to learn. I don't deserve my success is another way that I've internalized it. And I'm fighting that inside myself every single day. So I need to see your uplifting and empowering posts, Regina, and I thank you for them. So yeah, I could go on, I could fill this whole 2 hours with my trauma and my life lessons, but I'm gonna step back and I really wanna hear from some other people.
Yeah, you could have kept on going. And Regina, I got to get with you because I like that. But you know, sweetie, I'm gonna hug you when it's, you know, here it is. Bring it in. I'm gonna talk about racism in a different way. Back in 1976, I was in Phoenix, Arizona. I had just well, a little while, 6 months before, moved down there, and I had taken $11,000, and they had said, well, you know, put it in the bank and then we'll give you a bank card. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's great. Well, I couldn't deal with that. They didn't do checks. To make a long story short, they didn't do what I needed them to do. I walked in there. Needless to say, I got my money. And I was walking across the street, twice as wide as 41st. And I happened to see this woman coming toward me with this. Oh, now, because we're in 2020, she was a Karen back then. I didn't know. Well, anyway, so she's walking towards me because the man I happened to be with was my husband. And he happened to have hair all the way down to his butt. He had just came from Vietnam, and he was he's gone now. He was a medic and so on, and he had blue eyes, and he had all this hair that was blonde. She walked up to me, "What are you doing with him? You shouldn't be with him." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, honey, it's like this. You get him, you can have him because I don't do seconds." Straight up, that was it. And I thought, well, he's Dutch. Well, how could you do that? And I said, well, because, you know, he loves me. And so therefore, that was cool. My children, of course, are mixed. And I need to have you with my daughter because my daughter, people say, well, what are you? And she has taken it and she says, well, let me see what I can do with this. And she, cause she's my daughter, okay? And so I said, well, you do what it is that you need. Because if somebody's going to be that ignorant, and I just found out yesterday that ignorance requires a lot of work. And, but anyway, if that person is going to be like that, well, then you need to be able to steel yourself into whatever it is that you need to do. So she just said, well, you know, you should have seen her. I am my mother's daughter and my father's daughter. And therefore, today I might decide to be, and then she'd go off. And they'd be like this. Because before I married him, they said, you know, what about the children? I said, they're going to be beautiful. They're going to be beautiful. They're mine. They're going to be just fine. Just fine. And I'm dark. And sister, I never had the situation that you had with people being that bold in terms of the color. I grew up in St. Paul, and I dealt with it in another manner because I was supposed to be sit down, shut up. It's almost like that, what is it? Shut up and dribble. I was supposed to be subservient, whether it was to brothers, and that was a situation. They didn't know any better because they did know better, but it was about power. And sometimes, you know, you just come home and you've had a rough day and, you know, it goes down and then the kids end up kicking the dog. And I understood that. And we as Black women were able to do that. But it was about power. It was about, you need to be this, 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 and this. And it had to do with my lightness or my lack thereof. And I learned to deal with it the same way in some ways I taught my daughter. This is ignorance. I don't deal with ignorance. And it did affect And I dealt with it, and I still deal with it. I became a Muslim in 1998. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is, and then it's okay, 2000, you know, and okay, now I'm a terrorist and all the rest of this stuff. But my bringing up, when I was told from my mother that I could do anything I wanted to, and I said, like, be an astronaut? She said, yeah. I said, well, I don't want to do that. That's how I was raised back in the day. But you have to remember, I was 71. I am 71. So I understand a little bit about what you're going through because of my daughter. I understand a lot of what you're going through because you look just like me. And then the difference, people want to touch my hair, and I tell them leave my hair alone. You know, no, my hair, you don't get to. Then when I covered as a Muslim, well, can I see your hair? How much money do you have? Well, what do you mean? No, this ain't coming off. And then I said, oh no, see, God's gonna hurt me, just saying. No. But I'd like to use humor. You have some humor, both of you have a little bit. I use the humor because, number one, it lets me go through what it is that I go through, but it's also my power because it puts me in charge of what it is. When I'm dealing in particular conversations, when I'm dealing with particular people, because I believe God put me on this earth to be able to be okay, marry and love who I choose to, raise my children, have lots of kids, just had 2 though, and you know, just be. That was what was instilled in me from my mom and dad. And not everybody gets that. And I would hope that, you know, Julia can tell you, you know, I love squishing on her, you know, that's the mama in me. There's a lot of mamas out there. I'm an elder, you know, but it doesn't come without the work. But we did a lot of work, and y'all are beautiful products. All of you sitting there, all 4 of you, and the one behind there I can't see, all 5 of you are the product, and you're beautiful. You're doing a lot of good work. But understand, this is not new. 1976, Karen came up across that street. What are you doing with it? This is not new. Tulsa, Rosewood, these things aren't new. All the lynchings that are going on right now, I went all off into that, didn't I? All the lynchings that are going on right now, this is saying, get back in your place, nigga. But you come from strong stock. All of you come from strong stock. Because you wouldn't be here right now today if you hadn't. And I guess I want to say, can I get an amen? I don't know.
Amen. I was just about to say that. You beat to it.
And people came before me. I'm a product of who they are. And it's a struggle. That's why they call it the struggle. Mm-hmm. That's exactly why they call it the struggle. And we have our allies, such as what Julia is doing. Mm-hmm. The folks that are around her, the people that are here, the people that were at Juneteenth in Brookings. Oh my goodness, that was just wonderful. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking because I have moved all the way around. I'm stopping.
I'm worried I'm going to end up using this like a personal therapy session.
Yeah.
So what'd you say?
I feel like I need to stop myself just like you did. Like, otherwise I'm just going to keep talking and this is going to be therapy.
You know, the one thing that we have to remember is what we were told a long time. I know all of us were told this, but I'm going to say it again. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first
That's right.
before you can take it and put it on anybody else. And if this ends up being therapy, if we are, if that's what it is for us,
Yeah.
then so be it. Because we are a microcosm of others, aren't we?
I think so.
And if we want to cry, we just take them glasses and we, we.
Oh, it's happening already. Don't worry.
Is it good? Good, cathartic.
It's happening.
Good tears.
Yes.
Good tears. Now I'm really gonna stop talking.
I'll go ahead and jump in just to give folks like a little bit of break. Feel free to cut me off. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that you are saying, and I think the idea of this as like a therapy session is a powerful, radical thing because of, part of, anti-Blackness is misogynoir, right? The specific way that racism and sexism intersect for Black women. And, the intersectionality, that's something from 1989, Naima, you're talking, this is not new. Although there's a lot of, especially white folks that are just becoming aware of this, it's something that's been going on for much longer than we can imagine. And that intersectionality of that sexism and racism, where, we have things like that, the strong Black woman trope, right? That there's not, Black women are dehumanized and not seen as women because of those things. And white women, perpetrated that harm as much as white men. And a lot of times, that's erased, and being able to be aware of that and make space for that vulnerability and that courage to be able to show the real impact of what's happened is something that's necessary. Regina, when you were talking about bleaching and, talking about feeling less than yourself, when that was something that, that's a part of that harm that's happening. And, I really appreciated, Danae, when you were talking about how that tokenism impacts you, and like that proximity of whiteness was something that gave you value, and just that unpacking of all of that, like racism that like was internalized, right? Because it's something that happens where no matter where we're at, we are all existing in this system of white supremacist systematic racism. And when we talk about beauty standards, like that normal, that default is seen as something white, that Eurocentric kind of thing. And that's a result of colonialism, right? Of being able to force and just say, this is the most beautiful, when like all you have to do is look at Regina and realize, that beauty is not something that we have like a most beautiful, like it's beautiful no matter how like we see that. And I felt too, Danae, when you were talking about like the story of like just giving up being Egyptian and all of these things, like that feels like a part of like was it like the 80s and 90s, that the biggest, most best way you could be not racist was to be colorblind. And so like a lot of white people have like no literacy when it comes to race. Like they're racially illiterate, and so they believe that, like, and it happens where like people look at folks and see that there's something other, but they don't know what it is. And it happens within all forms of cultural identity, where you have like folks that are Asian, like people have jokes for not being able to tell folks who are Asian apart. And I think Danae too, you said something about like being spicy white. Like that's something that I've seen too, where like
first white and then what else is added to it.
Yeah, and it's this kind of where like there's this understanding of other, but that color blindness makes it so we can't talk about it and appreciate the one of the quotes that I come back to a lot with South Dakotans Against Racism is that it's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize and celebrate those differences that divide us. And I believe that's Audre Lorde that says that. And so like all of those things, the more we talk about these things, the more we see how truly interconnected and interrelated we are, despite, you know, this system that we've lived under that's wanted to separate us and divide us. And truly the way that we work through it is finding that connection.
Yes,
But then also,
reintegrating our thought.
yeah, and then also recognizing too, like and I think, you know, Angelica said too, is like that sometimes our place is just to listen and to like recognize that some things are not about us as white folks, or, you know, people who are, you know, that proximity to whiteness or whatever, that sometimes, you know, those conversations are things we can support people in doing, but we're not a part of, you know, it's not our lane to be in. So
Right.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everything, and I'll let you all go ahead.
I was gonna say it's such a huge struggle each and every day for me personally, because I'm one of those people that believes like everything takes reflection. Like if you're gonna tell somebody that they're doing something wrong, or if someone said that there's something wrong with you or you're doing something wrong, you have to be, regardless of if they're wrong or right, you have to be able to reflect and ask yourself, like, what lesson can I get out of this, right? So when it comes to like the Black Lives Movement that's recently kind of, you know, it's not something that just started recently, but more so more people are finding their voice to join the fight, right? So for me, it's like, as I'm doing that, I'm just like, wait a minute, I'm doing all this fight, trying to fight systematic racism, but also I got to do the work within my community. Almost half of the women in my community today, as I speak 2020, are bleaching their skin due to this beauty standard. And when I have these conversations, people are so defensive about it because they feel like it's a preference thing, right? So then I try to ask people to try to learn, like, and ask themselves and reflect, like, where does that idea even come from for you to have that preference of, you know, for me to be more beautiful, I have to bleach my skin, right? So it's like, I had to start from the root. I had to push in with my community to try to educate, you know, not only are you saying that your skin is not good enough, there's health issues behind it as well, right? So that motivates me so much. And I'm over here like being a Black woman, right, in the United States, and having to say, wait, the system is discriminating against me, and having to fight that fight too, right? And so, and also when it comes to, you know, amongst us as Black, colorism comes in, where we tend to have these bias, right? Bias perspective of each other, or looking at each other in like, oh, well, you know, for Danae, being that she's light skinned, it's almost as like, if I didn't know better, it would be like, oh, well, you have more privilege, right? So what struggles could you have?
I absolutely recognize my privilege, and I do. I can go to, I mean, it's the little things, like I can go to the grocery store and I can find a foundation that matches my skin color, no problem. I can find a hairstylist who might be tentative, but they can manage the curl pattern. I can go in a place and people can see me and my proximity to whiteness. They will say, well, but you know, she's got green hazel eyes, so therefore she's not so scary. There's something about her that I have seen before, and that gives people comfort. So yes, my lighter skin absolutely gives me privilege. I recognize that.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It all not only does it give you privilege when you speak of it, it also gives you a burden that is really rough. Mm-hmm. There is a burden. There is that burden. That's their word. There's that burden.
I have tried to enter Black spaces and have been met with suspicion, like I'm an interloper. I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
I think
not as often. That is an infrequent experience, but it has happened.
Right. And I think for me, it's so important to get everyone to peel those layers of these implicit bias that we have and check each other on it and work together to say, like, hey, we all individually have our own struggles, and can we work together to say, I see you. My struggles are not your struggles, but I have my struggles. Can we work together? Can we try to change the system? Can we try to change this idea of what beauty is? Can we appreciate one another? Can we work together to bring change, to say that, you know what, it's okay. It's okay if, you know, you're lighter skin. It's okay if I'm darker skin. It's okay if whatever it is, to just work together to see that, and to not judge each other based on, oh, she's light skinned, so therefore she has privilege, so therefore I have the right to I have the right to look down on her, and I have the right to feel like my struggles are more than hers, right? So I think that's, for me, that's the voice that I stand in, is just for us to all appreciate one another, and to acknowledge that we all have different struggles, and that the work is needed from each end. The work is needed from everyone. Yeah.
And to understand the why that we are all in this is very, 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 very important, because it's everybody that is within the system, as Julia was saying, we have our own things here, and all of us might not be looking at, well, how can I gain from her being pushed down, or him being pushed down, or moved aside, or whatever. Whether it's bullying or the desire for power, all of this is about power. And when you are brought up within a system, and the system keeps building and building and building on itself in regards to the power, that's what you have got there. And you've got the, quote, privileges in the power, but you have to understand why we are, well, not you have to, I know you do. People need to understand, everybody needs to understand the why. We don't always need to agree, but people, we all need to know the why. Whether it's, like I said, bullying has a lot to do with this. If I can put you down, that makes me feel better. And we as women don't need to do that. We as people don't need to do that. Now, when you look at how things are across the board, we've had all the lynchings and so on and so forth. We've had that black, we've had that white. Look at the old man got pushed down. Girl, I tried to go through the screen on him on that too.
Yeah.
And people are understanding. It's not just them, it's all of us. The why. People are starting to come up and go, well, wait a minute. There's the why. And then everybody will see how everything is working together, because we all, when we find that why, you know, whoa, yes. This is just wonderful. I like this.
I love your wisdom. I love your perspective.
Thank you. I'm 71. It's been a long road.
Well earned.
Yeah, and you guys have got a long road to hoe too. I mean, I don't know how quickly this is gonna happen, but again, you're putting your oxygen mask on, and you're getting ready to be open. Because that's what it is. When people, I told somebody the other day, I said, my phone number is out there. Even Christy Noam had, she got embarrassed. She said, well, I shouldn't ask you for your number, right? I said, no, my number's out there. You can ask. Yeah, I gave her the number. And so people will ask. People are going to ask, what does this mean? And I tell them real quick, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to answer your question. But I am not going to deal with the what ifs. And you get mad at me because I tell you the answer to the question you asked.
The defensiveness and the conditional.
If you really want to ask me, I will tell you. But I'm telling you right now, if I say, no, don't, you can get upset. But I guess it's my age in some ways, but at the same point in time, we've been saying, oh, they'll get it. It'll be, no. 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I stood. And at 5 minutes and 1 second, I was on the floor crying.
Yeah.
My son was chokehold. My son had a chokehold. He was going to college. He was, well, he's not dead or anything. He was going to college. The NFL was looking at him, and he was put in a chokehold because a white boy got beat up. And because of the fact, this is sad, because of the fact he got beat up, he decided to tell the police that the only person in a 100-mile radius that could beat him up would be my son. Because my son was good, top player.
And that was a threat.
That there was a situation, then they were doing something, and he put him in a chokehold. He broke the chokehold, and when you break the chokehold, you're not going like this. Oh, excuse me, could you please put my, okay, could you take it? No, he broke the chokehold. The guy got hit, and then more people came and grabbed him. Now he's not playing for the NFL. I guess it's okay, you know, he's gonna buy me a house and everything, but you know, he's alive.
He's alive.
He's alive, but he had a chokehold because somebody said it was that black, you know, what do they call them? Bubbas or something? Way back then. He lied on my son. Messed a bunch of different things up. My son is very successful and a wonderful young man. I have grandchildren and so on, but it goes, and people need to be able to understand the why, how that goes. One single act of fear, one single act of you won't be able to, like that woman. There's a African-American man here, and he.
They know enough to weaponize it, know enough to utilize it as a tool, as leverage.
Say that again. Do you say that weaponize what?
Weaponize our otherness, weaponize our race.
Yeah. Yeah. One more time. Weaponize our race. Yeah.
And that, I want to jump in and just talk about the fun experiences I've had in South Dakota. I was an athlete.
What'd you run?
Athlete.
What'd you run? What did you do?
I'm not going to tell you.
Why?
I'm going to tell you. It's part of the story. You got to wait. That's going to be the reveal.
Okay, patience.
I was one of the best in the state. I still have records on the books. My sport brought me to college. I had offers across the nation.
Wow.
My successes in my sport, I was told I shouldn't be successful. I had 15-year-old girls look at me that were in opposition to me during the sport that would tell me, I'm going to beat you. And you know why I know I'm going to beat you? Because you're black and you can't play this sport.
Okay.
Trying to psych me out. But what they don't know about me is that I am fueled by rage and I would embarrass them. But I'm 15. They're 15, weaponizing my race or my perceived race. Like, that's not all I am. I don't want to choose one. I want to be both. But, you know, that's another conversation. I was a swimmer. I am a swimmer. I'm aquatic, y'all. I swam for Snow Fox swim team in Sioux Falls from the time I was 10 until
I was 10. I don't know how to swim.
I will teach you, honey. I am a anything having to do with water, aside from synchronized swimming, like that's hard. No. But let me tell you what that was like, being at a swim meet and being the only person who looked like me, and knowing that people would mispronounce my name, and knowing that people would take away my success. They would rationalize it away. Why are you so good at swimming? Well, it must be because of your
Yep.
It must be. Why are you taking that away from me? I earned that. I had a teammate sit me down when I was about 16 years old, and she was mad at me because I was so good and she wasn't. And she dared look me in the face and she said, "It's not fair. I work so hard and I'm not as good as you. And it's not right. And I should be better than you." And there I am, 16 years old. I'm looking at her and I'm like, "You want what I have? I want what you have. You're blonde. You're gorgeous. You're smart. You got boobs, and that was a thing. 16-year-old girls, that was like a measure of success, real talk.
No problem.
I looked back at her and I said, I want what you have. You can take my athletic ability. Take it. Let's trade places. And she shut right the hell up. She cried, but she stopped. On paper, I am, okay, from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My name, Danae, is Greek. My maiden last name, Cummings, is English, Irish. Went to a Catholic high school, O'Gorman, class of 98. Only Black person in my class. I swam, Division I, went to UNLV. I have walked into job interviews and people who looked at my paperwork, this is pre-internet really. They saw me on paper, they talked to me on the phone. I have a Midwestern accent, this is how I talk. Yeah. And I walked in the door and they're like, oh, well, you are not what I expected. Like, what you are admitting to me does not make me feel safe. This is not okay, but I'm trying to get a job. So what do? Yeah, I get that a lot. Yeah. I guarantee you if that happened to me now at this age, my response wouldn't be to make them comfortable. But that's who I was. I had this coming at me. Your success is only because of your whiteness. We will allow you to be successful and to be in our space because you provide us with your skill, your brilliance. By the way, I think I had the top score on the ACT out of my entire class. What did that have to do with my proximity to whiteness? Access to an excellent education, absolutely, but I earned that. I earned those national titles. I put in the effort. I utilized this body, this brain. How dare somebody tell me that I don't get all of that success? But my entire life, I've had my success, like your son, I've had my success explained away. It's not because of who I am in my entirety. It's because of the part of me that feels most valuable to the people in power. It hurts to say it out loud.
But it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary. My dad was born in 1929, and my dad was barred from the Olympic pool. Which, because when you started, I'm thinking, no, it's not gymnastics. I just said, oh, my dad was barred. My dad was really, really good. And they fought, this is what we were saying, they fought to have him come in because it would be groundbreaking. Mm-hmm. But that was not going to be what they wanted. He was barred. He was not allowed to swim. But my dad, what would it be? He was 18 back in the day, because my math is, back in the day, he was not allowed in. And so what they were doing with you, that's 1925 he was born, and this is 1998, and you were still getting it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Long time.
That experience with the lady saying, oh, you're not what I expected from our conversation on the phone, that happened in Las Vegas in 2004 for a person who was interviewing me for a federal subcontractor position. Like, y'all should know better. Mm-hmm. They'd started setting in place some expectations. And I earned that interview. I'm glad, because I earned that interview based on my merit, mm-hmm. the content of my character, if you will. And I don't know if they felt bad. I like to believe that I earned that success. I got that job, and I worked at that company. I worked on that contract for just shy of a decade. But I always wondered, they took that success away from me, even if in my own mind. There was that 15-year-old girl who said, I'm going to win. I got nothing to worry about because you're Black and I know Black people can't swim. I beat her so badly. I beat her by more than a body length. I beat her in this race. I had enough time to get out of the pool and stand above her. And when she finished, she was so sure that she beat me. She looked backward in the lane and I wasn't there. And then she looked at the wall expecting like maybe it was close. And then I, leaning over her, said, ahem. And she looked up to me, terrified. And I said, not a thing. I won that. But I had nothing to celebrate. I went into the locker room and cried. And my teammates didn't come to me. My coach didn't come to me to help me and comfort me. My mom came to me to find me. I still can't think about that. That was like a regional type race. And we were close. I can't even think about that success in a positive way. All of these times over and over in my life, my successes have been diminished or stolen because I can't be successful according to them. Or I can only be successful because it's permitted.
Or affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, a lot of times that came up too. And no, I am a Division I swimmer in the honors college because of what I earned, not because somebody looked at me. It's that one I feel confident about. I chose where to go to school and on what terms, and I'm still paying the student loans for it because I refused the full ride scholarship. That was my pride. That was my pride.
I think
I
one
was
of
gonna
the go ahead.
I was gonna say, as I'm sitting here hearing you speak and your story, like I could relate so much. I remember when I came to Sioux Falls and I was searching for schools, like which school I was gonna go to, and I think the first school that was on my list was Southeast Tech, and my plan was just to do a 2-year, and then later on go back and do another 2-year because being a single parent, I thought it was gonna be hard to do like a whole 4-year. And I remember going to Southeast Tech and meeting up with an advisor. Mind you, I grew up in a household where I would be the first to go to college, right? So I didn't know anything about school. I didn't know anything about registration. I didn't know anything about financial aid or getting any kind of help. So I go sit down with an advisor and let her know that, hey, I want to go back to school. I just need help and how to just kind of navigate the system. And so she asked me a few questions, and I remember telling her like, yeah, I'm a single parent, but I really want to do this and I need help and stuff like that. And she looked at me and she said, well, and at that time I wanted to do nursing. I wanted to get into, be a nursing student. I wanted to get into nursing. That was the major that I was trying to get into. And she looked at me and she was like, well, I think with, the program that you're looking into, it's going to require you to do a lot of work. And I think with you being a single parent and, now just going back to school, I think you want to look into, finding a support system or some kind of, basically she just sat there and told me that there was no way that I was going to make it. And it hurt my feelings so bad. And I remember her saying, maybe you should just start with, maybe just getting a CNA and then coming back and seeing that if this is something that you'd still be interested in. And just to have a background in what you're trying to get into. And I remember leaving that office. First, I said to her, I said, you know what, thank you for your help, but I'll figure it out, right? And then I walked out. And I remember leaving that office feeling so worthless and feeling like, man, they should just tell me that I can't do it. They should just sit there and tell me that not once did she direct me and said, you could do this, or this is how you get your financial, like she didn't give me any information, but just sat there and talked to me as if I didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't going to succeed. And I was like, you know what, I'll show her. And ended up going to UC, and now 4 years later, here I am. So it's like, I get it being told because of your skin, because of how you look, that or just your situation, that you're not good enough, or you can't do it, or you can't succeed, or your success will come from something that's going to help you get there. It's it's painful. It's painful.
Yep.
One of the things I think that is really difficult about these kinds of things, I'm taking notes as everyone's talking, and I'm so grateful just for all of you being here. One of the things, Naima, when you were talking about, I really appreciated that, bringing in the part of that it's bullying, right? We look at it, and sometimes we don't recognize that because it is a systemic issue, it's not just something that's happening up at the top. It happens all the way through. It happens with the kids bullying. It happens with the way parents treat their kids, and it's bullying, and the way that when you're at work, there's bullying that happens, and it's that power dynamic. I really appreciate you bringing that power component into it, because a lot of the times when we look at it and we detach the power from it, then it's well, we're all equal. There's a lot of white folks that want to be able to, we're post-racial, right? The civil rights movement, it fixed everything. That's not something that I was a part of, so I don't do anything. And when we talk about that privilege, privilege is something because of that power. And if you don't use it as a responsibility to help, it is something that causes harm. And Danae, when you were talking about that, the idea of, I sort of just wanted to tie in, Naima, when you talked about your dad, and Danae with that 15-year-old that's weaponizing the history of white people preventing Black folks from swimming, right? That's something that's not something because Black folks aren't able to swim. It's something because white people literally from beaches to pools prevented Black folks from access to swimming. It's something where the idea of affirmative action or using the race card, those are things that are we talk about when we're talking about people of color and Black and Indigenous folks, but in actuality and in truth, the race card is that white race card where you have access and privilege to things because of your race. Because those boys that pointed their finger at your son, Naima, they went on and they lived their lives, and they didn't have repercussions because of their race card. And being able to push that where white folks need to, instead of doing, well, not me, I didn't do that, I'm a good white person, or however we try and excuse ourselves from that, recognizing that Danae, when you and Regina were talking about that privilege, even within that conversation, talking about privilege isn't something that's an accusation. It's not something that's a bad thing, unless we aren't acknowledging our privilege and using it to help other people. And that's when we have those feelings of defensiveness. And talking about Amy Cooper, calling the police on Chris Cooper, weaponizing, white women's tears, and, that part of the socialization of racism where it's something that's inherently dangerous. And she knew it, even if we try and plead ignorance. I think one of the things is, instead of doing the not all, not me, that's not me, is to think, how do I contribute to this? How do I contribute to the system? How am I playing a part in this? Am I actively being anti-racist, or am I just letting things continue the way that they are? I think we're getting up on an hour, or a little bit over an hour discussion. So I just want to be cognizant of everybody's time, and that we'll be having this out there. So if we just want to go through and do closing somewhat, I think this has just been really powerful, and I really appreciate everyone's perspective and the things that have been shared. And I would love to maybe do this as a series and continue the conversation. I really value just the group that we have here. And, if there's anything where that takeaway of how we can work towards acknowledging and dealing with the way that anti-Blackness shows up in racial conversations, I would appreciate just your thoughts on that as a closing here.
I was thinking, oh darn, I got something to say. The outside of fear and bullying, one has to remember, again, power does not give itself up a lot of times without a struggle. But this is a different place that we're in right now. Going back to the old gentleman that was pushed, he had a whole bunch of things put on him. It was not as bad as the brother. Well, he was a criminal and this and that and the other. Well, you still put your foot on him, or on his 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But that white guy was pushed. The elderly man was pushed. You got a whole bunch of people with the corona and the jobs are going and everybody wants to blame somebody else instead of thinking about the fact that the factories are putting in robots. They don't need all those folks. When they gave the $15 an hour, McDonald's put in kiosks to take care of people. You have all of these things, again, with the money, following the money. There is that fear. And the one other thing that makes this different is the fact that up until now, white people in Appalachia, and they were all poor, or not all poor, but what I'm saying is poorer people, poorer white people could always say, yeah, but I'm not Black. That makes me, yeah, but I'm not Black. When that man got pushed down and pepper spray was put in the woman's face and the bullet bouncing up and with all the white people, oh, there's a big fear. There's a big fear. There is a difference now, and everybody is now aware. It's not just Black folks. It's not just the Me Too movement, the bullying and all the rest. It's now everybody, and people can see it, and people don't know what to do. They don't know the what next. That's all I wanted to say. It's a different time. We have to be ready for that.
I think, Julia, when you talk about just like white America thinking that we live in a post-racial world, I keep thinking of the term bullying. I read something today that says, call it for what it is, because by calling it bullying, essentially you're erasing the underlying issue. When you see something, say something. So if it is a racist thing, it's racism, it's discrimination, it's white supremacy. And Danae, like you were talking about, what I should have said during that time when these things were happening would be different. It's different what you'd say now than what you did say. Times are changing and people are stepping up. And I think my role in a place like this is just understanding that as a person of color, I don't have a past, right? I've seen that a lot, especially in the Latin American communities. Well, I'm a person of color, so I deal with racism too, but so that I can't be racist, but that's not the case, especially in Latin America, just the anti-Blackness, which is a whole different conversation in itself. But I mean, I've seen it in my family, I've seen it with friends. So it's important that we acknowledge that we're not all, just innocent and I mean, like we have privileges we have to acknowledge as well. So that's where I want to do my learning and just, try to come up with ways in which we can address those. Because like Regina was saying, you have to point the finger back at yourself. And what's the point of me going into the community and advocating for Black Lives Matter, and then at my house I have somebody, saying the N-word and saying, oh, well, I grew up in so and so place, so I get to call or say that, So yeah, it's I think we need to challenge everyone around us, even if it makes them uncomfortable, especially in times like these.
I appreciate that, Angelica. I really do appreciate that, because it's like it starts at home and then out to the world. And as we're battling these issues out there with the systematic racism and everything that's happening around us, it's very important that we challenge the people that we are around day to day in our own bias beliefs. For me, I take it upon myself to always challenge my family and friends to. We have this biased views when it comes to African American, which is another topic that we'll get to another day, and how we view African Americans as quote unquote bad, or have bad culture or whatever. And I always challenge them on having them reflect and ask them a lot of questions on why do they think that, why do they view African American, and what's the difference between them and me and an African American person, what's the difference between you know, just questions to just kind of get them to reflect. And that's something that I do on a day-to-day basis. And I think once we continue to do that work and the inner work and the work with the people around us, and just, you know, everything will eventually, you know, fall into place. And I know that it's, you know, we've came a long way, and the battle will still continue. And it's just, it's, I guess it's, we all got to put in that work. Yeah.
Yeah, echo Regina. The work is constant. The work is on all levels. And I think, like Naima, what you said, it's an everybody thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've seen people doing the work now who never did before. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm doing the work on myself that I never did before. And that's a wonderful thing. I hope that continues. I think we're in a unique situation right now with the pandemics where people have nothing but time.
Yep.
And that was a big catalyst. Also the technology and the evidence that is being collected. Like, trust your eyes. Before, maybe you could only trust the stories, the newspaper, the filter of other people's experience and whether or not you believed them. But now you can trust your own eyes. That helps. I want to encourage people to build community.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of focusing on, I mean, differences are there and differences are beautiful, and diversity is what makes a community resilient. And I want to be a part of that mindset shift from a community does not need to be homogenous to function well. A community that is diverse, that welcomes new thoughts and different ways, is more colorful, is more beautiful, is more rich, is more fun. So I hope the driver behind all of this is that it's an us problem. It's not a them problem anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think even when we use those words and how we use them, when we say us, them versus just the word them, it's like you're kind of taking yourself out of the context and seeing it as like that's an enemy, or just, you know, looking at it from a different lens and saying that I'm not part of this society. And when you include yourself with everyone, it's like you see that it's also your part to do the work within that, you know, and to make that change. So yeah.
Thank you. I really I wanted to, Danae, one other thing that I had written down you had said, and I think this really fits with closing, is that if that interview had happened now, you wouldn't have done what you could to make them feel comfortable. And I think that's the big thing, is that we can't feel comfortable in this work. It is uncomfortable work. I struggle with, you know, that discomfort of like, am I doing the right thing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And that discomfort is that discomfort of growth, and being able to work through that and work through it together with others, I think is something that's really powerful. And, you know, transforming the idea of like us, them thinking, it's a part of that binary that we talked at the very beginning of seeing things as black or white, you know, good or bad, you know, us versus them, and really centering it in it's that we, right? And there's a quote that, you know, we have with South Dakotans Against Racism on our banner, and it's something that's been attributed to Fannie Lou Hamer, to Martin Luther King Jr., but it's the quote, "We're not free till we're all free." And I think that's where this work really needs to stay centered, is that racism isn't just something that harms, you know, people of color. It's something that harms all of us. And it's different, and the work that needs to be done shows up differently for all of us, but we're all in it together. And I'm really grateful just for everyone that was able to be on this call tonight, and I'm looking forward to just more conversations like this. And Naima, if you just want a few words as closing as our elder on the call, I would really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I shouldn't have been so open with my age. As an elder, I want all of you to know, and I want you to tell everybody that you know that is in this struggle, that you are doing the work and continuing, and you look so damn good doing it. You do. It's beautiful. When you get a chance to look at this video, look at the smiles that you guys just had. That's what it's about, the understanding and the love that you have for each other, and the love you have for me and everybody else. And you are putting your own oxygen mask on first. That's right. You're putting your own oxygen mask on, and then you're going to help everybody else. And as an elder, I feel really comfortable, and y'all leave me alone, I'll do the work, but I feel comfortable helping because I honestly feel, all of you, I want to just say, I honestly feel this time it's different. This time it's different. There's a thing that I posted with, what is that called? Read something with Jada Smith, and it's powerful. Take a look and you'll see yourselves in there. But that's all I have to say. I'm honored to be with you. And you can call me 9 to 9. I'm open. Mm-hmm. And I do not tweet because I got too much to say, not enough characters.
I just got on Twitter, so.
That's all. Because I could pray, but we're doing that. Prayer looks different to a lot of different people. But what we've done is we've prayed, and we've prayed really hard. Good job.
This was therapy, wasn't it?
Yes, definitely.
And we should do this more often because it's cathartic, it's informative, it's helpful. We can just keep going on with the words, but it's a struggle. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't go to the hospital to birth that baby, you got a midwife. Mm. Thank you for being there. Mm-hmm.